All right, lesson 18, homework part 3, question 16. Missile is launched with an upward initial velocity of 350 feet per second from a submarine 60 feet below sea level. Now, what that would tell us, if it's 350 feet per second, then we have that distance is equal to rate times time. So the distance upward is the rate 350 times the time t. So that's the distance it goes up. This is the initial height. And this is gravity pulling down. The gravitational acceleration constant in feet per second square is negative 16. So it started below the water. The initial velocity would thrust it upwards out of the water, but gravity is going to pull it back down towards the water. And when you factor all that in, it tells us the distance above the water at any given time. Now, we mainly, for our purposes here, are just going to use the formula, not necessarily totally understand it, although it would be good to understand it for high-level math and for our physics. What we gave you was that it says at what 2 times will the rocket be 1,290 feet above the water. So distance above water would be 1290 is equal to negative 16t squared plus 350t minus 60. We realize that we have a quadratic because there's a t and a t squared. It has an a, b, and a c, so we would solve by factoring, or the AC method. With big numbers, we generally go ahead and use the factoring of the quadratic formula. But before you solve a quadratic by any method, you must first do what? Get it equal to 0. That's putting it in standard form. So we would subtract 1,290, which would give us negative 16t squared plus 350t minus 1,350 is equal to 0. So now our quadratic is in standard form. Now that it's in standard form, we can identify the a of the quadratic as being negative 16, the b of the quadratic as being 350, and the c of the quadratic as being negative 1,350. So we're going to plug that into the quadratic formula. So we're going to have x is equal to the opposite of the b, which would be negative 35, plus or minus the square root of the b value, 350, thank you, plus or minus the b value quantity square, which we have to put it in parentheses square since it's a negative, so negative 350 quantity square, minus 4 times the a value of negative 16 times the c value of negative 1,350. Sorry about that. It's bouncing. Yes. Uh-huh. Oh, it wasn't negative. Okay. Let's start over. You're right. I would rewind, but it's okay. We're going to have x is equal to the opposite of b. The opposite of a positive 350 is a negative 350, plus or minus the square root of b squared. The original b was positive 350. Thank you. Quantity square. Therefore, it doesn't need to be in the parentheses. Minus 4 times the a value of negative 16 times the c value of negative 1,350 all over 2 times the a value of negative 16. There we go. Thank you. Times negative 16. The smart board threw a little deal up there. It's I get over here to the right, it's making my lines, it's drawing vertically sometimes. It's supposed to be drawing horizontally. It's just kind of doing weird. But anyway, so we're going to actually do the square, do that, and do that. Especially when I try to make a dot. X is equal to negative 350 plus or minus 3,500 squared would be 12,2500. How much? Yeah. 122,500. Okay. And then we're going to have the negative 4 times negative 16 times negative 1,350. So 4 times 16 times 1,350 is what? 864. Okay. And there's an odd number of negatives, so it's a negative or a minus. If I can get it in there. That's a minus sign. All over 2 times, my 2 times my E value is negative 32. I'm trying to do a decent looking job here. That was 2 zeros on the 86,400. Okay. And so now we're going to do what's in that parenthesis. And so we get x is equal to negative 350 plus or minus square root of, what's the 12,2500 minus 86400? 36,100 over negative 32. Let me clean house here. So now we're going to actually take the square root. So we're going to get x is equal to negative 350 plus or minus, what's the square root of 36,100? 190 all over negative 32. So after you take the square root, that's where you do the plus or minus, right? So we're going to have x equal negative 350 plus 190 over 2, or x is equal to, negative 350 minus 190 over negative 32. And so we get negative 60 over 32 is over negative 160 over negative 32 is equal to 5, I hope. And then we're going to get negative 540. This is about the worst I've ever done, calculating in front of folks. Over negative 32. And we get 135 over 8, which is, what is a decimal? Let's just make it a 16.875. So this missile will be 1,728 feet above the ground after 1 second, and then again on the way down after 16.875 seconds. Now, if it went straight up and is coming straight back down, and it missed what it was aiming at, they better get out of the way, right? Before 16.875 seconds, so they'll do themselves in. That's fine. You can round if you want. Any questions on number 16? You're right. Yeah, so it's going to get to that level because it started out underwater, right? So it's going to get to that level 5 seconds. It's going to keep coming up, and then it's going to keep coming down. Oh, and at 16.875 seconds, it's there. And they're 60 feet under, so they better start getting out of the way pretty fast after 16.75 seconds, right? Actually, it's actually here. It's actually here after 16.875. That's right. So I still got a ways to go. I'm glad this is recorded so everybody can enjoy this. All right. Any questions on that? Now I lost my marker, so I can't turn it off.